Enter.
Frank.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World, and tonight on the show he's back, Matthew Stadlen. He's going head-to-head with Reem Ibrahim. We're going back in the day with Mike Porky Parry. And behind the bar, on the pole, we've got Kerry Whelpdale. But first, let's go to the news.
A very good evening. It's just gone 7 o'clock. Your top story. Storm Eowyn is sweeping across the UK, bringing record-breaking winds and severe conditions. 1 in 5 flights from airports in the UK and Ireland have been cancelled today, and millions of people have been urged to stay home. Forecasters have flagged a rare red threat-to-life weather warning. Over 4 million people across Northern Ireland and Scotland received emergency alerts from the Met Office last night with guidance on how to stay safe. More than 240,000 homes and businesses are without power in Northern Ireland, and a record wind speed of 114 miles per hour has been recorded. 20,000 Scottish Power customers across the country are without electricity, and a red danger to life warning for wind has been extended in Scotland, where more than 35,000 properties have lost power. Local authorities have warned commuters to avoid travel at all costs. And the Southport child killer will likely die behind bars after murdering 3 girls at a dance class, but his 52-year sentence has sparked calls for law changes. Axel Rudabakana received one of the highest minimum custody terms on record for the attack in Southport in July last year when he was 17 years old. Alice de Silva Aguirre, B.B. King and Elsie Dot Stankham were all killed, and harrowing details of the attack were heard at Liverpool Crown Court yesterday. However, Southport's Labour MP Patrick Hurley said the sentence was not severe enough, and he asked the Attorney-General to review it as unduly lenient. Due to Rudabakana's age at the time of the attack, he cannot legally receive a whole life order. The head of the UK's largest police force has welcomed a review of contempt of court laws and said it would be great if more information in cases could be shared at an earlier stage. And pop star Robbie Williams has equalled the Beatles' record for the most UK #1 albums.
I got, you got, we got everybody. I got the gift, gonna stick it in the goal. It's time to move your body.
Williams' latest release, Better Man, the soundtrack to his biopic film, has become his 15th record to top the official albums chart. Matching one of the most influential bands of all time, the singer has shared a celebration post on social media, wearing a T-shirt featuring the names of the Beatles members alongside his own, whilst thanking his fans for supporting the movie and the album. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. I'm Lee Anderson, the Reform UK Member of Parliament for Ashfield. And joining me tonight, we have the Comms Manager for the Institute of Economic Affairs, Reem Ibrahim. Sorry about that, Reem. And just a quick warning, some viewers may find this next bit deeply offensive, is back. It's Matthew Stadlen. He's our left in the corner. Welcome back, Matthew.
By popular demand.
Congratulations to Matthew. You had a baby girl last week, Constance?
I did, yes.
Well done, mate. Look, straight to it. We saw last week, guys, in the London Assembly, the Reform UK member, Alex Wilson, he made a suggestion to Sadiq Khan in the chamber. Let's just have a quick look at that clip now.
The year's only just begun, and already we've seen at least 9 major stabbing incidents on our streets. My team has been working on a budget amendment where we would like to fund almost 1,000 police officers to deliver a targeted knife crime task force. And the way we do this is reduce the cost of your staff budget back to 2016 levels. That would give us the funding to do this. Now, would you encourage members of other groups, perhaps your own group in the Labour Party, perhaps the Conservatives, perhaps anybody, to second that amendment?
As a rule of thumb, I never encourage anyone to work with Reform.
Well, you saw the clip, guys. I thought that was pretty bad, pretty mean from Sadiq Khan. Matthew, straight to you. Is the Mayor of London putting politics before people's lives?
Definitely not, because there is no suggestion that he is not prioritising getting a grip on knife crime, and that is the single most important, I think, talking point that emerges from all this, that people are losing their lives and people are using lives in completely unacceptable numbers. It's not a totally new problem. I remember talking about this in 2005, but it is a very, very serious problem, and as a father of 2 young children living in London, it's something
Alex,
that I'm very concerned about.
He offered to put in a reasonable amendment and asked for backing from other political parties, and Mayor Khan said, as you saw in the clip, Matthew, he didn't want to work with Reform.
So let's get to the substance of that question. I don't think Sadiq Khan came out of it as well as he might have done, because I think he was walking into what might have been a Reform trap. I understand why he isn't exactly keen to work with you guys, because of the appalling comments that you made about him last year that led you to being suspended from the Conservative Party.
Suspended?
Yes.
Suspended, yes, Matthew, and re-elected by the great people of Ashford. Over to you.
Hang on, Lee,
It's absolutely insane to say that this is some kind of party politics in which Sadiq Khan is effectively saying that he cares about people that are being killed on London streets, and yet at the same time refuses to work with members of Parliament, or indeed with any other politician from any other party that decides that they're actually going to go and do something about it. Alex's amendment would have put almost 1,000 new police officers on the streets in order to actually create this knife crime tackling task force. Yes. This idea that Sadiq Khan is effectively saying in that clip, I'm going to entirely ignore Reform UK in order to just prove a point politically, effectively playing politics with dead children.
That's simply not true. That is simply not true.
That is what's happened.
No, it's not, because what this amendment was to put 1,000 new officers on the streets, which, by the way, if it's possible to do, I would welcome, but it meant sacking people in the mayor's office.
That's doing nothing.
I think they're literally doing nothing.
City Hall.
The fact that people are being, Matthew, the fact that people are being arrested in this country and being investigated for their ex-posts, and yet people, murderers on our streets, are allowed to roam entirely freely. I mean, I went to a state school in London. I knew that there were boys in my class that carried knives. I knew it happened. We all discussed it. And yet at the same time, nobody did anything about it. The police were so incompetent. They actually, at the exact same time, had knife detectors in our school. And the kids, we know what they'd do. They'd dash the knives in the bushes, go into school, and as soon as they walked out, they'd pick the knives back up again. It's absolute incompetence, and no one spoke about it. Sadiq Khan has unequivocally failed, and he has got children's lives on his hands.
Hang on, sorry, let's just be absolutely clear about this. Sadiq Khan clearly cares about knife crime and the murders. Let me finish the point. And the murders of children and indeed adults in our capital city. Of course he does. Has he got a grip of it? No. Would Zach Goldsmith, had he won, or would Susan Hall, had she won the mayoral election, would they have got a grip of it? How do we know? That's counterfactual history. But on the issue of reform, you made those appalling comments essentially saying that he was controlled by Islamists. You refused to apologise. I asked you to apologise to him. And so he walked into this trap. And what he should have done, is tackled the issue, Lee.
Matthew, let me hold you to account here. You may think, in the world of Matthew Stadlen, you may think those comments were appalling. In the real world, Most people agree with me.
I live in the real world.
No, you don't. You live in Notting Hill. That's not the real world.
Sadiq,
I was there this week. It's not the real world.
Kensington and Chelsea, the borough of Kensington, is the most mixed borough in the country.
The real world.
Let's deal with the issue. Let's deal with the issue. You were very rude to him. I don't think he should have responded in the way that he did because it came across as high-handed and even arrogant.
It was awful.
It played into your hands.
It's absolutely insane, Matthew.
It played into your hands.
Sorry, the thing that you were picking up on is Lee's comments from absolutely ages ago.
A year ago.
And B, it absolutely doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, many people feel as though Sadiq Khan is, I wouldn't use the same word, I wouldn't use the word controlled by Islamists, but he definitely panders to people that seem to think it's racist to have these conversations. It's exactly the same reason why the grooming gang scandal was entirely covered up and wasn't being discussed. And it's exactly the same reason why people are too afraid to talk about the problem in London specifically, but it happens across the country, which is the fact that people on our streets are dying as a result of knife crime, predominantly by minorities. We have to have these conversations openly. It's not racist to say that. I come from a North African family. It's not racist to say that.
I'll go back to Matthew now, because some politicians seem to think it's racist to increase stop and search in London. What do you think to that, Matthew?
I think the stop and search issue is a really delicate one. It's an important one. If you talk...
Why is it delicate? Why is it delicate?
Because if you stop and search a disproportionate number of people from a particular community, that can,
you mean the same community that's stabbing people?
Hang on. That can drive a wedge between that community and the police. It could potentially make things worse. However, if you talk to some black mothers, as I have done on my radio show in the past, they will support stop and search. So I don't think it is a straightforward issue. But Reem has just said people are afraid of talking about knife crime in London. Of course we're not afraid of it. And whoever is committing those crimes, we need to go after them. We need to sort it out. We need to work out why people are doing it, why kids feel scared. We need to make sure that they realise that they're more likely to die or kill someone if they carry a knife. We need to grip that. We need to tackle this aggressive macho culture. We need to make it more difficult for appalling zombie knives to be available. I'd ban them entirely. And we need to make sure that there are more police on our streets. We need to make sure there are more police on our streets.
Banning zombie knives and going after Amazon and whatever Sir Keir Starmer is talking about this week will make no difference.
Multi-prong approach.
You've got to look
no
at
difference.
But it's a multi-prong approach.
It's like his other silly idea a few weeks back, arresting somebody who's selling rubber dinghies coming out of the channel. It makes no difference.
I didn't just say that, though. I said other things.
You've got to solve the root of the problem. And I can tell you why knife crime occurs in the way that it does. People that feel as though their own lives are at risk, and I went to school with some of these boys, they feel as though their own lives are at risk, so they carry knives in order to protect themselves. It's effectively gang warfare.
How do we change it, though, guys?
I'll tell you how we can change it. I've got a simple solution, Matthew. I did raise this in the Commons a few weeks ago. During last summer's riots, fair play to Starmer, he stopped the riots within about 2 weeks, and what he did was he got them arrested, in the dock, in prison, within 10 to 14 days. The riots stopped straight away. You get caught with a knife, in court the following day, prison the following day, 5-year mandatory sentence, it would stop in a week.
I think that's...
It would matter.
Well, hang on. The problem is the police are too bothered about people's expos, so they don't care about actual murderers.
That's a sort of extreme characterisation. The police are faced with enormous challenges. I think we do need more police. I think that Reform London Assembly member was right to call for more police.
So why does Sadiq Khan refuse to work with
Hang on. Sadiq Khan doesn't need to agree to that particular amendment, which would involve sacking staff at City Hall in order to get more police on the streets. The question is Lee right that sending people to prison immediately for 5 years, would that work? Possibly. And if it would work, it's something very much worth looking at, I would say.
Reem?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. These are potential solutions. The problem is we don't have the funding and necessary resources for these kind of policy initiatives. And ultimately, the problem is police time is actually being wasted on so much.
If we can take the rioters, as we did last summer, and lob them into prison within a fortnight, we can take these people carrying knives, because the message would get out very, very quickly in places like London that if you carry a knife, you're going to jail for 5 years and I'll tell you what, they'd stop doing it.
I think you're totally right. The problem is we don't have any of the prison spaces because we refuse to build any new prisons.
Yeah, but we have the spaces for the rioters.
We seem to have the spaces for the rioters, but we seem to not have the space for people that actually commit horrendous crimes. I mean, the fact of the matter is we have to release people early because we just don't have the space in these prisons. We need to build new prisons. We also need to stop arresting people for silly crimes. I personally believe that if you're found with a small amount of marijuana, you shouldn't go to prison.
If the deterrents were much harsher, Matthew, you wouldn't need as many prison spaces.
If you're right. If the deterrent works...
Go to some... Have you been to Singapore? I went there last year. Have you seen the deterrents they've got there?
I would like to live in Singapore. I wouldn't. I
would.
Want to live in an authoritarian state, thank you very much. But I think longer sentences for people carrying knives are worth looking at. And people might say, well, hang on, do you really want to bang an 18-year-old starting out in life who's felt scared, has carried a knife, has made a mistake? Do you want to bang them away for 5 years?
Hold on a minute, Matthew.
Let me respond.
The Southport killer was 17 and carrying knives and killed 3 little children.
Let me respond. And the answer to that would be, well, if it stops people losing their lives, you don't come back when you're dead, then that might be worth it. Whether it would work or not, I'm not sure. And in the short term, you have to put more money into the justice system, and we'd have to pay more taxes. So let's be clear about that.
So I think this is a really important point. Yep. We have to cut spending elsewhere, and that's exactly what Alex wanted to do. I think it's a really important point here. We don't need to be taxing people even more. We already spend huge amounts of money on the criminal justice system. What we should be doing is what we should be doing is ensuring that police are not wasting their time on social media posts or on silly things like low-level drug crimes.
I agree. Listen, guys, another feisty debate. Matthew Stadler never fails to deliver. You might not believe what he says back at home, but neither does he. Do not go away, because coming up next, we're going back in the day with Mike Porky Parry.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, you know I like an auction.
Yeah.
And I've bought some strange things at auction before you have as well, haven't you, Eamon?
Yeah, well, Ellie would throw this in the bin that you're coming up with now.
How about this? Admiral Lord Nelson's hair.
No.
Cut. I mean, is this a bit spooky? Cut as he lay dying during the Battle of Trafalgar, so someone's gone, oh, we'll just have a little bit of that there. In 1805, is on sale in Jersey, and it's a little cup. How much would you pay for the hair?
No, nothing. It would go in the bin, straight in the bin.
What? Even what? Nelson? That's very disrespectful to the British culture and heritage.
I think it's disrespectful that he lay there dying and someone thought, we'll take a quick step.
Well, maybe they just had. Maybe they thought, you know, because there's obviously the famous painting, isn't there, of the Battle of Trafalgar? Maybe they thought we'll give him a quick haircut, and then they kept their £15,000, 15 grand.
Where's the hair come from? What part of the body?
His head, Eamon.
Well, it could be his underarm. I don't know. You know, it depends.
Let me have a little look.
You would bid
it's very curly. I think it's his head. It's his head. What?
You would bid more for his head than, say, his underarm.
Well, I think so, yeah, I would hope so, yeah.
Or anywhere else.
I would hope so. A little less whiffy there, the head hair. And there it is. And it's in a little pot.
No.
And the only way you can probably find out is if you DNA test it, I guess. It's definitely his.
Whoever pays for that is bonkers.
Well,
that's creepy.
I was seriously tempted to make a bid for a toupee. Not for me, but as worn by John Wayne.
John Wayne's wig?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Why?
Well, why I didn't get it was my wife said to me, that is not coming into the house.
Well, she's right. She's right.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
It's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World. It's time to go back in the day with this legend of a man, second time on the show. I'm glad you're back on. It's Mike Porky Parry. I don't know why they call him Porky. I just call him Mike.
That's pretty obvious, isn't it?
But look, mate, it's a Friday night. We're in the pub. We're having a few beers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? Every pub's a parliament, but in every pub you will find Premier League managers sat there, sipping their pints. They can pick the best team for their club, and your club's Everton. And
well, we've just had a revolution, of course. Davy Boy's coming back, OK? So there's plenty of enthusiasm there. And in our first game, you know, for the first hour, we were 3-0 up against Spurs and 3-2. Good job it didn't go another 10 minutes, but that's football.
Well,
you know, it's the hope that kills you.
It does. It gives you highs, it gives you lows. I mean, if you're an Everton fan at the moment, you probably had far too many lows. But as you know, I'm a Nottingham Forest fan.
Well, you must be having a huge high.
But, you know, you had one of the greatest footballers ever to grace the game, Mike, and that was Dixie Dean.
Yeah, absolutely. William Ralph Dean. Didn't like being called Dixie, but that was his nickname. And he was born in 1907. He was my grandfather's best mate. I'm an Everton shareholder. I've been, you know, attached to the club all my life, and so was my father, so was my grandfather. And Dixie Dean was born in 1907 in this week, our greatest ever player.
So back in the day when players like Dixie Dean were playing football for big crowds in, you know, a proper...
72,000.
Yeah, a proper working class sport back in the day, weren't it, football? Not like it is today. You've got to be pretty wealthy to afford a ticket.
Even in the 70s, right, and I've seen some, you know, I do like looking back on the football that I watched as a kid. Even in the 70s now, I've seen pictures of the turnstiles, as we used to call them, with a sign at the top, 5 shillings for the Eastern Terrace. 5 shillings. Yeah. Last time I turned down a ticket to go to a football match was Arsenal, who wanted me to pay £830 for a seat in an executive lounge. And though I could have afforded it, because I've worked all my life like you, I just thought at that point, that's ridiculous.
Well,
you know?
You should have told him you're Keir Starmer's security man. You'd have probably got him for nothing.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. Yeah.
But you know, you go back to the the 1930s and 1940s, even the 1960s and 70s. You know, the footballers would walk to the ground and play a game, and then walk back and go for a few beers in the pub.
Well, they certainly made their own way to the ground, whereas they arrive now in a coach. But I mean, probably the best example of that sort of thing is Stan Bowles, the Queen's Park Rangers player, who would literally be spotted coming out of the betting shop on the other side of the road from Loftus Road, you know, where Queen's Park Rangers Stadium, dashing into the ground, getting changed, and 10 minutes later he's out on the pitch. That's how it was.
Well, if you play for QPR, we won't be going to collect his winnings very often, would we? After the game.
Yeah.
He came to Forest, Stan Bowles did.
I didn't know that.
I'm sure he came. Yeah, he came.
It could have been. It was very short.
Very short
time.
Yeah, I think he's one of them players where he probably had too much of an ego for somebody like
and funny thing is, he was one of those individualists. So everybody said, why didn't he play for England? But players like him and Rodney Marsh and
Frank Worthington, Tony Curry,
Tony Curry, because they were individuals, the managers thought they can never fit into an England team. You know, the lad from Southampton, Matthew Letizia, thank you very much.
Yeah.
He was very reluctantly put into the England team by Terry Venables in that horrible game against Ireland over in Dublin, OK? And that was called off at half-time. That was the end of Matt's international career.
I never thought that Glenn Hoddle got a fair crack of the whip, and I know he got quite a few caps, but he should have been the first name on the team sheet at that time, early 80s, late 70s.
I think that's always the problem with an outstanding footballer. An international manager doesn't know what to do with them because he's got to bring players from other clubs to play around them. You know, it's the impossible job, as Graham Taylor said.
You talk about your granddad being friends with the great Dixie Dean.
Yes.
What do you think he'd have made of today's game? You know, players earning hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, not living, got private jets, yachts. You know, they're secluded, live in gated communities. And
I think Ronaldo, by the way, is on about nearly £3 million a week. So just to put all that into perspective, in Saudi Arabia, you see what I mean? But, for instance, I'll tell you how it was in those days. In 1933, Everton played Manchester City in the FA Cup final. We beat them 3-0. Dean, Steen and Dunn scored for Everton. The following morning, Sunday morning, my grandmother told my father, who was then 10, go and find your dad and Dixie. And my dad found them face down on the pavement outside a pub in Birkenhead after coming back from London, celebrating the FA Cup win, and had to support them both back home to have Sunday lunch in my grandmother's kitchen. So that's a bit of a...
Wow, that's a good story.
a bit of a distance from the way that sometimes 16 and 17-year-old kids now turn up at the training grounds, literally in Bentleys driven by somebody else, like their agent or something like that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't begrudge them that, Mike.
I don't for 1 minute, no.
I mean, fair play to them, but... let's talk about Everton a little bit.
Yep.
You know, my son went a few weeks back actually to watch the mighty Forest play you off the park.
Yes.
And he said, Dad, it's a dump, that ground. It needs knocking down. But you're getting a brand new ground, aren't you?
Well, we are getting a brand new ground. It's not dump. It's a classic, really, football ground.
That's a good way of putting it, Mike.
It's a classic football ground. Manchester United is a dump. I was at Old Trafford this season. No, I'm telling you, I went up there to see Everton and water pours through the roof. Yeah. Do you know, Old Trafford is the only ground in the Premier League that doesn't have any internal video screens at all.
Really?
They don't show you the replays and all that. It's a really decrepit old ground.
Yeah.
Goodison Park is classic. I'm sorry it's got to be knocked down, but we're going to Bramley-Moore Dock, and as a shareholder of Everton, I'm due to get the official tour week after next, and I can't wait to go and see it.
When's the first game going to be played there, Mike?
The start of next season, although within the next few weeks we'll be playing youth games there to trial the stadium.
And I guess when you actually have your first game next season there, it'll probably be the best ground in the Championship. Well, Mike Parry, that's been great to talk to you. Thanks. That's the legend, Mike Parry. Coming up next, we've got right versus left.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. The next 24 hours sees the most damaging winds from Storm Eowyn move north, turning calmer for many with some frost and ice issues by dawn on Saturday. Here's the position of Eowyn as we go into the evening. It's going to move into Shetland, and the strongest of the winds are going to transfer northwards into central and northern Scotland. Again, the risk of 80, perhaps 90 mile-per-hour wind gusts, but for Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland, into northern England and North Wales, the worst is now over, and much calmer conditions are expected overnight across many parts, with some rain in the far southeast, but elsewhere clear skies allowing a widespread frost and some icy patches as well, particularly where we've got some rain, sleet and snow showers moving through Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as well, further snow accumulations over in the hills and some icy patches here and there. But it's a blustery start to the weekend, certainly for Scotland, even if the worst of the winds by this stage are easing. Northern Ireland, much calmer first thing, and for a large part of England and Wales, it's simply blue skies and a fine winter's day is expected for England and Wales, following the blustery and often wet weather that we've seen over the last few days. In fact, in some places, barely a cloud in the sky and light winds. Very pleasant out there, although feeling on the cold side with highs of 7 or 8 Celsius. Feeling particularly cold in the north of Scotland, where those strong winds continue into the afternoon. But for Northern Ireland, we've got cloud and rain moving in, along with gusty winds. Nothing on the scale of Storm Eowyn, of course, but could be some lively weather going through the evening, crossing the country and then clearing into Sunday morning. Sunday morning starts off with the frost across northern and eastern parts of the UK. Further west, we've got the cloud building because the next low comes along, and that's going to bring some wet and windy weather into many western and southern parts of the country by Sunday afternoon. Not on the scale of Eowyn, but not particularly welcome either.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Right, it's time for Right versus Left, and I've got Reem Ibrahim and Matthew Stadlen, firm favourite of the channel for this part of the show. Southport, guys. We saw what happened, the horrific scenes in July last year. All sorts of accusations, guys, about cover-ups and politicians falling out. But let's just have a look what Sir Keir Starmer had to say just this week.
But let me address the facts as you put them to me. There has been a failure here, and I don't intend to let any institution of the state deflect from their failures, and I acknowledge that readily here. Yes, I knew the details as they were emerging. That is the usual practice in a case such as this. But you know and I know that it would not have been right to disclose those details. The only losers, if the details had been disclosed, would be the victims and the families, because it ran the risk the trial would collapse. I'm never going to do that. Never going to do that, because they deserve that justice. And only by having the rules in place can that justice be delivered.
Matthew, I'll come to you first. Accusations of cover-ups, not giving the public enough information and stuff like that. What do you think?
Well, I don't think there's been a cover-up, because this now man who committed these absolutely evil acts has pleaded guilty, and we know that he's pleaded guilty, amongst other things, to a terrorist offence. And so I think now the focus should be perfectly legitimate in a democracy to ask questions about whether the government could have given out a bit more information. But I think probably the focus should be on how on earth do we go about trying as a society, and how does the government go about preventing this sort of horror happening again. And I think there are very big questions to be asked about why the system failed in the build-up to this horror attack. Why was this man, child at the time, why did he come into contact with the government's Prevent programme three times and not get referred on? Why wasn't it taken on when he was looking at school killings and jihadist material?
I think, Matthew, when Nigel was sort of suggesting we're not being told, given the full picture, it's that sort of thing. It's the fact he had been referred to Prevent 3 times. He had been caught carrying a knife 10 times. He had been, bullying and attacking people in school. He was making, poisonous substances in his bedroom.
But Lee, this has all obviously come out, and it's come out. I mean, the trial didn't progress to a full trial because he pleaded guilty. But we know all this stuff now. And there was no question that that was going to be held back. The key thing is justice had to be done. It had to be done, but let's just remind everyone, so that the families and the victims got justice, and also so that this monster is put behind bars.
Matthew, Keir Starmer knew the full facts of the situation. So Keir Starmer knew that he had terror links and refused to tell the public. If that's not a cover-up, I don't know what is.
What does that? How would that have helped? And even if it might have helped,
the public deserves to know the full information.
But they do. Well, no, not if it jeopardises a trial.
Well, it doesn't know, Matthew.
How does it jeopardise the trial?
The information...
The advice of the CPS, as they were building their case, was to make sure that justice could be done and that there was no chance of a mistrial because information that could have jeopardised that. That is how our system works. What is he covering it up from? It's all come out in due time with due process.
At the time, Starmer said he had no other information, and he has now admitted to knowing that that this guy had links to terror attacks. He effectively said that he
What
was...
do you mean links to terror attacks?
He was links to terrorism. He was referred to Prevent multiple times. He was caught carrying a knife. He was Googling and researching how to kill people.
This information might have jeopardised a trial.
No,
so
the
what's so
public-
difficult to understand about this?
Matthew, the public deserve to know the full information.
If that's true,
Not if it
Matthew,
jeopardises a trial.
why did they divulge that information in October if it would jeopardise a trial?
That I don't know. I say you have to, and that doesn't mean that.
So then the
they got it
argument
wrong.
doesn't stand
no,
up.
it doesn't necessarily mean
doesn't
that
stand up.
because the advice can change over time. They were clearly building a case, were they not? What was the motivation for this cover-up? Explain. What are they trying to cover up? Why are they trying to pull the wool over the public's eyes?
I think part of it is actually Starmer himself wanting to protect the more radical left parts of the party. I think.
Come off it.
No,
that is
I think
verging
part
on
of it.
conspiracy
No,
theory.
but it's not verging on conspiracy.
Do you think that hard
theory.
left in the Labour Party would support an atrocity like what we saw in Southport?
No, I'm not saying they'd support it. What I am saying is that they are much more willing to protect particular minorities in order to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. By this kind of thing, I mean the riots, right? I mean the Southport killings were disgusting.
Did the riots happen?
We saw
Why did the riots happen?
The riots happened because people were upset that 3 children died.
Doesn't mean. But
that's why the riots happened.
I'm sorry. That's just. Did you riot?
No, of course.
Well, why not?
Riot.
Because she didn't
Why
live
not?
there, Matt. Listen,
sorry,
listen,
but the overwhelming
Let me
majority of people in Southport,
Listen.
the community most affected, and around the country, did not engage in criminal activity as a consequence
But you
of
know
this
what?
monstrous. Don't tar whole communities with that.
Listen, Matthew. You know if Sir Keir Starmer had come out straight away and said, look, this is not an asylum seeker that's committed this awful crime.
Well, he did say that, didn't he? The CPS or the police did say that this was someone who was born in Cardiff because the rumours were that this person stepped off a boat. So they killed that very quickly.
Yeah, the riots were born out of that lack of information coming out. And the police, by the way, wanted to release more information about this suspect, but it was the CPS who stopped them.
Right, so you can't blame Starmer for the CPS.
This is the predominant point. Well, you're right, you can't blame Starmer for the CPS, but what you can do is blame the entire government for continuously lying to the public and continuously withholding information.
Sorry.
I think that... No, I'm sorry.
Lying to the public. There was an attempt to protect a trial so that the victims of this horror attack would have justice. It's not nonsense.
It is nonsense.
Of course it's not nonsense.
If they can release the information in October, they could have released that same information in July. And nobody in the government...
But it depends what was going on behind the scenes to build a case.
Build a case?
Yes, to build. That's what they did. But people had to go in hazmat suits. You know this, right? People had to go in hazmat suits to inspect that property over a period of time. Yes, it's true that the ricin was discovered very early on. But that doesn't mean that Starmer should... he's not admitted. He's been open about the fact he was aware of it.
This only happened very recently.
Yes, he has, and that doesn't mean he was wrong to withhold the information at the time. Look, it's possible that he could have given more information. It's possible that in some way that might have helped. I don't know. And it's perfectly reasonable to ask those questions, particularly given the riots were going on at the time.
We are asking those questions.
No, but don't suggest that there's some sort of cover-up to protect the hard left of the Labour Party
Matthew,
or minorities.
I don't
know
know
no evidence for it.
Matthew, you're absolutely right. I have no evidence that Starmer was trying to protect the hard left of the party. You asked me, why do you think he would do this? And I'm saying, here is a possible reason. I have no idea why he did it, but ultimately he did it. I have no idea why he did it, but ultimately he did it. If this is not a cover-up, then what is a cover-up?
Just this week in Parliament, I asked a question to Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, who said in her statement that last year 162 people have been referred to Prevent on suspicion of an unhealthy interest in school massacres. Right. I then asked her how many of these 162 people were currently being detained. Do you know how many it is?
0.
0, because she didn't say 0, she just waffled on with a nonsense answer. But actually, I would bet my mortgage on it being absolutely 0.
I think the Prevent system itself
is broken.
Is entirely broken.
Well, I suppose the question is, what do you do? Let's say that someone comes into contact with Prevent because they show precisely that, an unhealthy interest. I mean, there's not much of a healthy interest, is there? But an unhealthy interest in school massacres. What are the powers then available in our justice system to deal with those people? Can you
this
lock
is
someone up for
right?
that? I don't know.
Yeah, this is partly the point. And this kind of gets into the free speech angle, where actually, would you then put somebody in prison or indeed detain them until you realise if they are a risk because they, for example, searched up some stuff about school killings? I mean, these are difficult conversations. And this is really where the line comes in.
You're a big advocate for free speech, right? So does the state start worrying about what's on your browser?
Well, exactly. Exactly. And that's why this is a really difficult conversation, because on the one hand, freedom of expression, I think, should absolutely be upheld no matter what. However, Prevent is there in order to literally prevent people from then committing those atrocities.
Yep.
So I think that research needs to be done. There needs to be, I suppose, police funding and power in order for them to actually investigate people and assess that risk. If you're somebody like if somebody that's really interested in learning more about these kind of cases, would you then be referred to Prevent and potentially?
But also the definition of terrorism, and this is what Keir Starmer is suggesting, may need to be changed now so that you are not limited to Islamist terrorism or far-right terrorism, but if you have an interest in extreme violence, and that might be a motivation for committing acts of extreme violence, you could then be designated a terrorist.
I just think sometimes, Matthew, it's better to be safe than sorry, and get these people.
It's like locking people up for what they're looking at on the internet if it doesn't break a law.
Listen, I mean, if they're showing an unhealthy interest, as you say, in school massacres and what's going off inside their head, I think these people would be, society would be far safer. And our children would be far safer if these people were detained until they can be either treated or whatever they need to get them out. Because some of them have been radicalised online, some of them have been radicalised by all sorts of nut jobs groups out there on the dark web, and we've got a duty. We always say that our government's first duty is to protect its citizens, and Prevent was set up to protect citizens. And we saw the killer of David Amis, he was referred to Prevent, went on to kill David. And this creature this week has been referred 3 times to Prevent, and he's gone to kill children. And he tried to kill 10 more, by the way.
The Southport killings will be a stain on this country's history and what's happened, and the fact that the government have failed.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that listened to the story at the time are entirely heartbroken.
There is going to be an inquiry into this, and rightly so.
I've done my inquiry already. The system's not fit for purpose, and it's as simple as that, Matthew. And the people that work for Prevent should be sacked, every single one of them. That's me.
What, even if they've done nothing wrong?
Well, what they've done wrong, they've done nothing right. Time for the yes or no quiz. Right, guys, Matthew knows this one. He's very competitive, although he's had a new baby in the household, in the Stadlen house, so he might be off guard, because he's been grinning all morning, and that's not like Matthew, trust me. Right, number 1, Matthew, and he's still grinning. Should knife carriers get a mandatory 5-year sentence?
No.
Yes.
And Reem, was there a cover-up in Southport?
Yes.
Matthew?
No.
Matthew, was Khan right to refuse to work with Reform UK?
No.
Reem?
No.
Number 4, Reem, have you been impressed with Donald Trump so far?
Yes.
No.
You don't believe this. And Matthew, will Labour smash the gangs?
No.
Oh.
Big no.
There's a verbal tick there, Reem.
Big no. It's a big no, because ultimately they are entirely wrong.
Why have you done this to him? Why have you? You can't have him winning again.
I'm sorry.
2 bits of good news in 1 week is for Matthew Stadlen is far too much to bear for me. Matthew, you've won again. Reem, you know.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. I'm really bad at not talking.
Yeah. Do you want to quickly come back on one, Matthew? We've got about 30
Trump,
seconds.
listen, on Trump, hugely opposed to so much of what he stands for, the way he behaves in public, the things that he says in public, but it is possible, I acknowledge this, because I'm not an ideologue, that the world could become almost accidentally a safer place under Trump. And if he can sort,
the World Health Organization,
that's not a good thing. If he can sort the Ukraine war, that's got to be a positive.
Ended war in the Middle East, got the US out of the World Health Organization. He said there are finally 2 genders. I think common sense is back.
And on that note, common sense, we'll stop there, because coming up next, we've got YouTuber and cooking sensation Kerry Whelpdale.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
More showers to come across Cyprus this weekend, although it does look dry out by Monday. There's more wet weather to come across parts of Spain and Portugal too. There are those showers clearing by Monday. Plenty of fine and sunny weather over the central Mediterranean. Good looking day on Sunday across Sicily and Sardinia. Some sunshine for the Balearics, but more rain heading into southern Spain and Portugal. Plenty of sunshine in the Canaries this weekend, and things are warming up into the mid-20s on Monday in Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
People living with obesity are people, and they deserve the right for treatment and care as much as anyone else. What we need to understand is that obesity is a chronic condition, or a disease, as some people call it. It's not a choice. And this is the bit that people really struggle with, is that people think this is a lifestyle choice and people have done this to themselves. What we now know is the science and the evidence shows us that this isn't a choice. People have genetic predispositions for living with obesity. What we need to do is be a bit more compassionate and caring to people that live with obesity and support them to make healthier choices, not actually just discriminate and tell them that they're doing something wrong when, if I had asthma, for instance, you wouldn't be saying the same thing to me there. But then it's exactly the same.
Usually, if you're going for an operation of some form or other, there'll be often there is a criteria. So my mother, she had a knee operation. They wanted to make sure her blood pressure was right and all these things. This is, to hear somebody say that obesity isn't a choice just because you've got genetic predisposition to it, it's just exactly why people seem to be legitimizing being overweight. Ozempic has proved that people are overweight because they eat too much. Because Ozempic tells you to stop eating, it makes you think that you've eaten and makes you feel full, so you don't eat. You may be predisposed to anything, but you also have a large percentage of responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. So absolutely, it is in the patient's best interests, because if you're overweight, it'll take you longer to heal. You're more likely to have complications, the same if you smoke, and also the outcomes are usually better. So for a smoker, if you quit, say 4 weeks before surgery, you're 25%, your risk is lower of respiratory complications. So this is literally, of course it's discriminatory, because you have to decide, you have to prioritise the people that are likely to survive the operations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
That's Last Orders at the Bar, and I'm delighted to be joined by Kerry Whelpdale. I said that right, didn't I?
You did say that right.
Queen of the Kitchen.
Oh,
YouTube sensation, glamorous lady. You married to a footballer. You used to play for Peterborough United.
Yes.
And he was a friend of Aaron McLean,
Yes.
the ball machine.
Yes.
That stood in that very spot just
He did.
a few weeks
And I'm going to
ago.
pull a much better pint.
You're going to pull a pint later. Well, the bar is set pretty low. Because
I know.
all he poured was a
Froth.
pint of froth. It was 2 flakes
terrible.
in that. You could have got away with that. But you're a bit of a genius in the kitchen. I've been watching your YouTube videos.
Oh, thank you very much for the views.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so making meals on a budget, how does that work?
Oh, I do. That's actually like my favourite series, because I feel like I love food, but I don't like spending loads and loads of money on it. And also, I really like to add kind of quality to content to give people a purpose to watch it. So yeah, I love going shopping, setting myself a bit of a mission, and creating really delicious meals on a budget. I feel like
why?
it's really
How did
easy.
you get into this?
Do you know what? I'm no chef. I've never been trained, nothing like that. I just started sharing what I fed my family, and then people started enjoying and copying what I was making, and it kind of went on from there.
Okay, so obviously, just a few years back, I got into a little bit of hot water over comments I made. I was working voluntarily whilst being a Member of Parliament. I was also helping at my local food bank, delivering meals to people, vulnerable people that need a little bit of help. And the chef I was working with told me that we should be educating people or training them on how to buy the right ingredients to cook from scratch, the right cuts of meat. And he said he could feed a family of 5 for 50 quid a week. And I thought he was chatting nonsense. So we did the challenge, we did a Ready Steady Cook, we got some other MPs there, and he made 172 meals, well, we did, for 50 quid. It's like a 30 pence portion.
That's amazing.
But
I mean,
the point was making, yes, not everybody's got an industrial kitchen, but the point was making was, if you batch cook with some skills, you can cook, wholesome meals.
Absolutely. I definitely feel as well like you have to meal plan. That is essential. You have to go through your cupboards and your fridge and your freezer and use up what you've got already. Because obviously, when you buy products, you're not going to just buy something for that meal. Yeah. Buy frozen, don't be brand fussy, and you can honestly make it work. You really can, and they can be delicious meals as well. And also, maybe cut out meat a couple of days a week as well. That really helps.
What would you replace the meat with, though?
No fake meat. Look, if you want to make a bolognese, use lentils. You don't.
That sounds boring.
It's not. Season it right, and it's delicious. I'll cook for you one day if you like.
I had some vegetarian meatballs a few weeks back.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
Like eating cardboard.
Don't do the substitutes. I just feel like they're never going to satisfy you like the real thing. So have your proper meatballs on a Monday, but then have something meat-free on a Tuesday. All about, balance.
So is it about planning? Would you have like a plan in your head, or have you got a little chart on your cupboard?
I'm one of those people who I have a list. I love a list. So I will write it out. Also, do not go to the supermarket hungry or online shop. Otherwise, the supermarket becomes like a buffet and you eat as you go round, and that just ups your bill. So you want to just plan, stick to your plan, do not go outside your plan. Yeah. And you'll be so surprised at what you can get for 50 quid.
Okay, Kerry, so when I was having this problem with politicians, they were opposition politicians at the time, I actually wrote to every single Labour MP and said, come and join me and the volunteers at the food bank and have a go at this project. And not one person actually accepted the offer, but there is a little bit of resistance. And I hear some of these idiots, and they are idiots, I can say that, that say that, junk food's cheaper than freshly cooked food. That's why people are fat. That's why they have this rubbish.
I mean, I don't agree with that at all. Literally, I don't agree with that one bit, because I feel like junk food I think it's actually quite expensive, because it's all the packaging that comes with it as well, and I think when you buy real food, if you buy frozen vegetables and you buy a big pack of them, they have actually got more nutrients in them than fresh vegetables.
Yeah, they have, yeah.
Exactly, but they're cheaper. Yeah. So, I don't.
Because there's that myth, isn't there, really? Yeah. And people say, oh, it's fresh, it's not been frozen. It's not better for you, because as soon as you pull it out of the ground, it starts, getting rid of all its whatever's got inside it. Whereas if you freeze it, the goodness.
The goodness, that's the word.
If you freeze it fairly quickly, like they do in Lincolnshire, it's like it keeps all that stuff.
Same with fish and fruit. Honestly, it's the way forward. So you can't. I do feel like no brand fussiness. Frozen over fresh sometimes if you want to keep it in the freezer for a long time. Otherwise, you also end up throwing things away.
So just before we came on, you mentioned you come out with a word that sent me weak at the knees, and I had to go and lie down.
Oh gosh.
Vegan. You mentioned the word vegan, didn't you?
I'm not vegan.
No, but you had a vegan meal, you were telling me. Tell
me
about
that. It was delicious.
It was awful.
No, it was honestly. Hey, you told me about the aubergine that was so delicious.
Yeah, but was that vegan? It had cheese on it.
Yeah, but it could have been vegan cheese.
Well, it wasn't. It was a roast, 2 slices of aubergine roasted with some, I don't know, herbs on. Or they might have dropped it on the floor, I don't know. And some cheese on and melted, and it was absolutely delicious. Yeah. I'd have never thought of that.
I mean, listen, I'm not a vegan, and I wouldn't go vegan because I do love meat too much. But you can definitely have the most delicious. We live in Brighton, so there are so many vegans there. There's so many vegan restaurants, veggie restaurants. I'm telling you, come to Brighton.
I've been to Brighton.
Okay, let's go for a vegan meal. Come on, I reckon I'll be able to twist you around.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've been to Brighton a few times.
And you've never been to a vegan place?
I'm not sure that's in the real world. That's no offence to anybody that lives in Brighton, by the way.
You're just jealous. It's very cool.
So if you get the phone call, 6 o'clock at night, and your friends are ringing up and saying to you, oh, we're still coming, and you forgot you've invited your friends round for a meal, what would you rustle up?
I make a great carbonara.
Yeah.
totally not Italian way
Yeah.
to offend everybody. Totally.
Oh, well, just tell me how to make that then.
Okay, so what you do, right? This is literally whack the pasta in 10 minutes. Okay, don't snap it.
Yeah, yeah.
The Italians will be pleased about that. Then the sauce is literally vegetable stock, soft cheese.
What sort of soft cheese? Like Dairy Lee?
Dairy Lee?
Yeah, that's soft
no,
cheese.
Philadelphia. Or you can use non-branded, up to you.
Okay.
Then, so that's your sauce, right?
Them triangle things, them Dairy Lees.
Yeah, but you don't want those.
Okay.
You want Philadelphia. Yeah, soft cheese.
Yeah.
And then, like, obviously you want your bacon bits, your lardons.
Dairy Lee Dunkers, can they go in?
No, you need to get Dairy Lee out your mind. It's
Okay,
not
okay,
about Dairy Lee, it's about Philadelphia. Right, so that's your sauce. Got your lardons, got your pasta, whip
Lard?
it together. Lardons.
What's lardons?
Lardons.
What's lardons?
It's the bits of bacon.
Okay.
Yeah. Mix it all together.
Yeah.
Garlic bread on the side.
So you've got a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And you
I do.
teach people how to cook.
Yeah.
Now we need
well,
to...
I do. You know.
Well, we need to expand that, Kerry, don't we? We need to teach people how to pull a pint. You've got a pint pot there.
All right.
That
I'm
one
gonna...
there, love.
Yeah. I like this.
The old neck oil.
Yeah.
You've got 30 seconds.
If you've rigged this, I'm going
No, I
to
haven't
be
rigged it, I
furious.
haven't rigged it.
Okay.
So you've got to pull a pint, 30 seconds.
Okay.
Plonk it on the bar, and we'll see how you compare with Erin McLean, the goal machine.
Okay, well, I know I'm going to beat
3,
that too.
2, 1, go for it. Have you ever worked in a pub?
I have.
Oh,
I have.
Here we go.
Look at that, it's actually...
It's an absolute fix.
No.
You knew you was coming on this show. You knew Erin McLean was awful at doing this.
Yeah.
You've been practicing. Look at that. Put it on the bar, darling.
Oh, yes. Erin,
Yeah, I've got to
that
say.
is how you pull a
Will he
pie.
watch this, do you think? Will he watch this? You're going to send him the clip,
I'm going to
aren't you?
send him the clip, 100%.
That is pretty good,
Do I
actually.
get a job?
No.
No, it's too far.
I'm going to give you...
Right.
I'll tell you why I was banging about Dairy Lee, because we went to a posh restaurant, me and my
Could
friend.
have had a little bit more of a head on
My
it.
friend's from Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, she's from Doncaster. Proper flat cap and whippet type. And we asked for a cheese board in this restaurant.
Oh, no.
And he says, have you got any Dairy Lee Dunkers?
Oh,
and
no.
even I knew that was ignorant. So if you're watching Nick Fletcher, that is ignorant. I'm going to give you 10 out of 10 for that. That's
Thank
great.
you. Thank
Lovely to
you.
meet you, Kerry.
Lovely to meet you too. I've got a bit of beer in my
That's
hand.
Kerry Whelpdale. That's Last Orders. What a great lady.
Thanks, guys.
Massive thanks for joining me on Lee Anderson's Real World. More of the same next week, but coming up next, we've got State of the Nation. Cheers.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. The next 24 hours sees the most damaging winds from Storm Airwin move north, turning calmer for many with some frost and ice issues by dawn on Saturday. Here's the position of Airwin as we go into the evening. It's going to move into Shetland, and the strongest of the winds are going to transfer northwards into central and northern Scotland. Again, the risk of 80, perhaps 90 mile-per-hour wind gusts, but for Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland. Into northern England and North Wales, the worst is now over, and much calmer conditions are expected overnight across many parts, with some rain in the far southeast, but elsewhere clear skies allowing a widespread frost and some icy patches as well, particularly where we've got some rain, sleet and snow showers moving through Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as well, further snow accumulations over in the hills and some icy patches here and there. But it's a blustery start to the weekend, certainly for Scotland, even if the worst of the winds by this stage are easing. Northern Ireland, much calmer first thing, and for a large part of England and Wales, it's simply blue skies and a fine winter's day is expected for England and Wales, following the blustery and often wet weather that we've seen over the last few days. In fact, in some places, barely a cloud in the sky and light winds. Very pleasant out there, although feeling on the cold side with highs of 7 or 8 Celsius. Feeling particularly cold in the north of Scotland, where those strong winds continue into the afternoon.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB.
Then on demand. Good luck.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is